Adding and retrieving cookies. In the preceding lesson, we've discussed about the cookies and its attributes. Let's discuss about the adding and retrieving of the cookies. Let's start with placing cookies in the response headers. The cookie is inserted into a HTTP response header called setCookie using the addCookie method of the HTTP Servlet response interface. By using this method, we can add a cookie with the setCookie headers, i.e., previously defined headers. Here is an example for adding a cookie in the response header. First, we create a cookie with a name and value, and then we set the lifetime for a cookie. Finally, we add the cookie in the response using the addCookie method. Now let's see how to retrieve the values of the cookies, i.e., reading cookies from the client. To read the cookie that comes back from the client, we have to call the getCookies method on the HTTP Servlet request interface. As a result, it will return an array of cookie objects corresponding to the values that come with the HTTP request header as cookie. If there are no cookies in the request, getCookies returns null. Once we've got the array of cookies, we have to find out the cookie that we want to retrieve a value by calling getName on each cookie. Once we've found the cookies, then we can call the getValue method to retrieve it. Let's move on to discuss a sample program that illustrates the setting and reading cookies in the next lesson. Sample program using cookies. Now we will analyze a program that illustrates usage of cookie in the application. Here I wrote two servlet programs. They were send cookies and retrieve cookies. First, let's see in brief what these servlets do. Send cookies servlet sets 4 cookies. In this, we set 2 cookies to the default expiration, i.e., whenever we close the browser, the cookie expires. The other 2 cookies will be available for the next 30 minutes, regardless of whether the user restarts the browser or reboots the computer to initiate a new browsing session. After 30 minutes, these 2 cookies are also expired. Retrieve Cookies servlet retrieves the cookies that are available for the current domain name and displays the cookies. If no cookies are available in the current domain, then it will display the message "No cookies." Now we will analyze the codes of these servlets. First, let's analyze the Send Cookies servlet. In this program, Send Cookies is the servlet name which extends the HTTP servlet. Then, I created a cookie using the cookie class by giving the name and value in the cookie constructor, and then I add the cookie to the response header. Again, I create a cookie and set the lifetime of 30 minutes, or 1800 seconds, for that cookie using the setMaxAge method. This process can be done 2 times using a for loop. So, I have totally created 4 cookies. These 2 cookies don't have the expiration time, so whenever the browser restarts, the cookie expires. These 2 cookies will expire after 30 minutes. Then, I set the content type for the response and gave the message that there are 4 cookies associated with the page. Also, I'd given a link to a Retrieve Cookies servlet, which will show you the cookies. There are some more messages about the session. We will discuss those messages in the output. Now let's analyze the Retrieve Cookies servlet. In this program, I set the content type for the response as HTML. Here, I create a table, which has 2 columns. They are cookie name and cookie value. Now, I retrieve the cookies associated with the page using the getCookies method in the request object. After this, I am checking that if there is any cookie available for this page using an if condition. If there are no cookies available for this page, then I will display the message "No cookies." Otherwise, I will display the cookie name and value by using the getName and getValue methods. Now let's see the output of both the servlet. In this output, we are looking at the message. There are 4 cookies associated with this page. To see them, visit the Retrieve Cookies servlet. 2 of the cookies are associated only with the current session, while 2 others are persistent. Quit the browser, restart, and return to the Retrieve Cookies servlet to verify that the 2 long-lived ones persist across sessions. In this page, we are also seeing a link to see the cookies which will invoke a Retrieve Cookies servlet. When we click the link, Retrieve Cookies servlet will execute and display the cookies. Now we are seeing the table containing the cookies. After this, I restart the browser and see what happens when I try to execute a Retrieve Cookies servlet. It shows the persistent cookies alone, i.e., which is having expiration period as 30 minutes. I think you remember the message that was displayed while executing the Send Cookies servlet. After 30 minutes, what happens when I try to execute the same Retrieve Cookies servlet again? It will display the message, No Cookies. Now I'm confident that you have got a clear idea about cookies. With this confidence, I am moving to the next lesson. Session tracking using Servlet Session API. Earlier we had discussed about the session management using the various methods. Here, we will discuss about session management using HTTP session APIs. The javax.servlet.http.http session is an interface that provides various methods to identify a user across more than one web page. Normally, using sessions in servlets involves these steps. Let's look at them. Looking up the HTTP session object associated with the current request. Creating a new session object when necessary. Storing information in a session. And discarding completed or abandoned sessions. We can look up the HTTP session object associated with the current request by calling the getSession method of HTTP servlet request. If any HTTP session object exists, then it returns that particular object. If the session object does not exist and the Boolean value in the parameter of the method is true, it returns a new HTTP session object. If the Boolean value is false, it returns null. Of the method looks like this. Once we've got the session, we can look up the information associated with the session using the getAttribute method. If we want to set the value in the session, we can use the setAttribute method. Likewise, many methods are in this HTTP session interface. We have already discussed about the interface in the previous chapters, i.e. Servlet APIs, so there is no need to discuss here also. Finally, if all the processes are finished, the session was invalidated by using the invalidate method. We can also specify the maximum inactive interval period, after which the sessions remain idle and will be automatically invalidated. We can define this interval using the setMaxInactiveInterval method. Let's see an example for session tracking using the session APIs. Here are the codes, and let's analyze how we can maintain the state here. Here, session example is the name of the servlet. Whenever the servlet receives the client request, it starts execution. We call the getSession method with true as the value of parameters, so it retrieves either the existing session or, if there was no session, it will create a new session. After that, we create an object named CountOfType class. Then, it searches for an attribute named CountOfType in the current session and assigns the value of the attribute to the object. If it cannot find such an attribute, it assigns null as the value. After this, We can check the value of the object if it is equal to null. We assign the value for count as 0, i.e., number of previous access is 0 and displays the message as welcome to Wings. Else the value for count is incremented and displays the message as welcome back to Wings. After this, we stored the count value in the session by using the setAttribute method. Then, we print the few information about the session such as session ID, last access time, the session creation time, and the number of previous accesses in the form of table. We can get the ID using the getID method. Similarly, we can get the creation time and last access time using the getCreationTime and getLastAccessTime methods. The value for the number of previous accesses is the value of the count object. Let's see the output of the servlet. Here is the output page for accessing the servlet for the first time. We can see the number of previous accesses is 0 and the other information such as session ID, creation time and last accessed time. I refresh this page now and we can see the number of previous accesses as 1. So for every refresh the count was increased and becomes 2, 3, 4 and so on. The time for last access time was also updated. Now I'm confident that this brief discussion gives you an idea of maintaining the sessions using the HTTP session object.